Good afternoon, at least at the time of the recording. This is Michelle Rich at the Iowa After School Alliance. I'm joined by Megan and Marty from Council Bluffs Schools. Today they're going to talk about their Voyaging to Proficiency program, so we're really excited to hear about this. I think it's a good model that can be replicated in other programs, maybe with some adaptation, but I'm excited to hear all they have to say today. So I'll turn it over to Megan and Marty and let you take the wheel here.
Thank you very much, Michelle. It's our pleasure to do this presentation, and hopefully word travels throughout the state of Iowa, because indeed all the students of Iowa we call our own. So Voyage to Proficiency, or V2P, was a club, an after-school club that we collaborated with CV Dreams, our local 21st century club here in Council Bluffs. And if you turn to the first slide, there's a hyperlink called "Anything is Possible," and that is kind of a thing I think all educators believe in. That if you give a child a chance, or you give a person a chance, anything is possible. And Julie Siegel came up with a quote that a charismatic adult in a child's life can really change or help the child believe in themselves. And we took that at its word and came up with this idea, and that's on slide 4. We were told, or we were asked by our administrator, that if we could just identify 10 students from our team of 120 students to reach proficiency that hadn't previously been there. And what that is on the Iowa assessments. And the kids we were looking at, we called bubble kids. They were right on the edge, perhaps 5 points underneath proficiency. We thought if we could find a way just to give them a boost, they would reach that, and therefore all of our achievement in our building at Wilson Middle School would go up. So the last point on that slide, as far as understanding, we thought that the kids needed to know the what, which is the goal, but before that, know the purpose of why they were trying to achieve that goal. And if they put the why with the what, then they would have success. So the next slide, slide 5, is what exactly is V2P, or Voyaging to Proficiency. Voyaging came from our team name, the Voyagers, and we put the proficiency on that just to go along with the catchy phrase. Now, the what is the curriculum. We felt that if students receive some additional instruction revolving around the content areas that are tested on the Iowa assessment, reading comprehension, math, and science, and we also gave a little boost in their attitude, giving them belief that they could reach and they could achieve proficiency. We purposely planned the lessons every Wednesday, 1 day a week, after school, to help them learn new strategies or help them strengthen strategies that they were in the process of learning, and that would push them over the line. The why on the bottom, we not only wanted to attack the content and boost them there, but we also wanted to give them cultural opportunities. Why? Because a lot of the kids that we service, we work in a school that is about 92% free and reduced lunch, and a lot of them don't get the cultural opportunities to experience. And so, in collaboration with our after-school program and 21st Century Learner, we were able to include field trips to local museums in Omaha and universities such as Iowa Western, to give them that cultural experience, that they could see the benefits of achieving proficiency. Now I'm going to turn it over to Megan, and she's going to talk to you about how we chose the students for our club.
When we first started collaborating, the 4 core teachers, math, science, language arts, and social studies, each of us looked at all of our students, and we decided which kids were pretty close to proficiency on their Iowa assessment scores. And we had some standards that we had to go by. And as you see on slide 6, we made sure that they were within 15 points of proficiency, or that they gained last year and we just needed them to continue this year, or they were proficient in one subject but maybe not in the other 2, but were pretty close in the other 2. when we looked at all of their core subjects, we did this in a Google spreadsheet and just kind of matched them across the board to see which students might fit best in our club. The other thing that we had to evaluate was whether students would participate in the club. Working with sixth graders, some of them aren't necessarily interested in doing some extra schoolwork after school. So we wanted to make sure that they would be willing to put forth that effort and give that extra little bit to make sure that they would hit proficiency, and then the reward was the extra stuff that we did at the end. So on slide 7, I'm going to bring up some of the data that we had, and I'm just going to do this through the PowerPoint, so I'm going to switch through an extra slide here. On slide 8, these were the reading comprehension scores for the Iowa assessments when our students were in 5th grade, so the 2016-2017 school year. And as you can see, a lot of them, the red line is proficiency. Many of them actually hit above the red line. And so what I looked at as a language arts teacher was many of them were proficient in language arts, but they weren't proficient necessarily in other subjects such as math and science. And after taking the Iowa assessments in 2018, the red lines indicate growth, whether it be positive or negative, and you can compare that to the blue scores, which were their scores from 5th grade. So a couple things that I want to point out is we had a few students that were super low, and then they actually went way above proficient. We had a few kids drop. One of those students I know did not complete the club, but we still wanted to track the progress. We had some growth of over 50 points, which for the Iowa assessments is really outstanding in language arts. And I'm going to pull up some more data in a little bit, but I wanted to show the comparison. Blue was their 5th grade year, and red was their 6th grade year, and this is language arts. The next one is science, and as you can see, only 7 students were hitting proficient in science when they were in 5th grade. Some of them were even pretty low in 5th grade. However, the ones that are low may have been proficient in language arts, but we wanted to make sure that they could use the content from language arts and transfer that across all the content areas. So when we compare their 5th grade science Iowa assessment scores to their 6th grade Iowa assessment scores, I do believe all but 7 hit proficient. So when you look at the 4th student over, they went from below to advanced, and we had many students gain, and I don't think any regressed. In math, we have one that hit right at proficient, and we had 2 that were above proficient. All of these students are within 15 points of proficiency, and then when we compare their 5th grade scores, which are the blue lines, to their 6th grade scores, which will be the red lines, you can see that they all have grown, and in math we had all but 3 become proficient. So to put this into perspective, I'm going to go back a few slides, but I want to bring up the numbers, because I think the numbers sometimes are more meaningful than just seeing a bar graph. If they are green, they have hit proficient, and you can see that some students, for example, student 3, hit proficient in 2 out of the 3 areas. And then when we look at reading comprehension, we can see growth in some students of 49, 47, growth across the board. So when we look at row D, if it is highlighted yellow, that would be growth that is exceptional. When we look at math in row G, we can see a lot of exceptional growth. And if they're green in row F, they are considered proficient. And what's really amazing is looking at their 2018 Iowa Assessment Science scores. All but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 were proficient. And we see a lot of exceptional growth here. For example, this student grew 67 points. This student grew 31. So we're seeing a lot of growth across all of the core areas that were tested. And some students grew in every single subject. So for example, student 4 grew 47 points in language arts, 19 in math, and 56 in science. Okay, so going back to the data, I know that a lot of people, when they see bar graphs, doesn't mean anything. So I wanted to show some of the numbers that went through them. And I'm going to turn it back over to Marty.
Okay. I actually am going to, you should have kept that up, I'm sorry. Going back to that data page, Megan, could you pull that up again, please, and see where it's at? And I just wanted to make sure that you pull up that, there we go. Well, maybe.
It takes a second.
Okay. Looking at this page here, just the last thing that I want to comment on that Megan covered brilliantly is if you look at the blue in the 17, 18, like there, that column E compared to column F compared to column E, and how the blue changed from 3 to all of those numbers there. And in science and in reading, they pretty much held the same. There is a legendary historical belief that when students leave the elementary and come to a middle school, there's a huge amount of transition. And many 6th grade achievement scores drop because of the social transition that these kids encounter. This Voyaging to Proficiency also helped the students overcome this, and I believe it was because of what Siegel said. We had a belief that they could overcome it and gave them a reason for, and gave them purposeful instruction, and indeed they did. So, going on to the next slide, slide 14, what the club looked like. We were asked by the administrator to choose 10. We went triple that. We chose 30. We started the club with 31 and ended the club 8 weeks later with 29. And 29 out of 31 stayed with us, which is remarkable. A couple of them dropped for other reasons, be it family or move, and the 29 that stayed with us, of course, were on that chart that you saw. What the club looked like. They'd come to our room right after school, and for the first 30 minutes, we would have a snack, and we would have motivation or attitude or building community activities, and build our team, build our team morale. And then after that motivational meeting, we would split. The students would rotate into 4 groups. Now, if a student was advanced in math but needed some help in science and reading, they would rotate through those 2 stations, and then their third rotation would be with another motivational segment that one of the teachers would share. We had 4 teachers working with the team, so one in each content area and one for the attitude purposes. Students would spend 20 to 25 minutes in each subject, and then they'd rotate through. So the 4 teachers we were putting in approximately an hour to an hour and a half after school on Wednesdays to support this program. That took place at Wilson Middle School. And then after we would take, and it says approximately 2 weeks, 2 hours a week we would take for planning, because you're wondering how would you set this up at your school. Well, it takes planning. So we would do approximately an hour to an hour and a half perhaps planning, and then we would execute or facilitate the instruction, which would take another hour. What background info did we take into consideration? Well, we took in the previous Iowa assessment scores. We took in the SRI scores, the current scholastic reading inventory scores. We took the fast math testing scores. We took a lot of data points and put that into consideration. There were also data points that were not scored on a test of any sort. We took into consideration there were just flat out students who wanted to be part of the program. And they may have already been proficient, and we included them as well because they just wanted to be part of the program and improve, of which they did as well. So we identified these students that were within range of proficiency proficiency, and most of them were bubble kids, but there's some that were already there. And we selected them. They had to have a good attitude to achieve. We invited them to participate. We sent a permission slip home to inform the parents and get the parents' permission when we did go off-site to the field trips that we had planned. And then we implemented. We began Voyage into Proficiency, and I would say we began that just after the new year in January. But why global citizenship? This was probably the most heart-wrenching part, and you see pictures all throughout these slides. These are our students at different museums. We took them over in Omaha to the Durham. We took them to the Jocelyn. We took them to an interactive place called Kinnico. We had trips set up to Iowa Western. Unfortunately, it rained that day and we couldn't get there, but Iowa Western was going to participate with us and give kids a sense of the college campus. The bus that's on the opening slide, that was at the Durham Museum. A lot of these kids have never been to those museums and may not have gotten a chance to go to those museums. So we were so appreciative with 21st Century and CV Dreams to be able to support the transportation there, the snacks there, the admissions there, the contact there. And the response from the children were tremendous. They just had a marvelous time. And it was a tremendous, we put on this slide 16, the hook. We hooked the clubbers with this. So, Megan's going to talk to you about what a possible lesson might have looked like.
First, I want to introduce Jordan Silby on the right and Diane Munch on the left. These were our partner teachers. Jordan teaches math and Diane teaches science. They couldn't be here with us today, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that they were involved. And Jordan has sent a math lesson that she actually used in the Voyaging to Proficiency Club after school, so you can kind of get an idea of what these lessons look like. And keep in mind that the mini lessons were only like 20 minutes, so it wasn't too long that the kids were in there. Let me pull it up here. Okay, so when they came in, they'd of course have to go to the Google Classroom, and Jordan wanted us to let you know that she looked at the skills that were on the Iowa assessment, and she covered many skills in one day, but then they were taught together, and she would use games to kind of teach them and motivate them, so that way the knowledge would transfer. And when they would think about something like decimal places, they would remember the game that they played so that it would stick in their mind. Another cool thing she did is she would teach one of the kids in each group the skill that was needed, and those kids would have to go back to their regular education rooms and then teach the rest of the kids the concept that they learned. So it was almost like a reteaching that Jordan was using, and she loves this, that she made mathematical. So she would always start with her learning target, and so the kids came in and they knew what was expected of them throughout this mini lesson. So if they're learning decimals, they are going to need to know how to write decimals in the word form by the time they leave this lesson. And then underneath we have the success criteria, so they know if they've hit it or not. And if they haven't hit it, then they can go to Jordan, they can ask for additional help to make sure that they are solid and they are proficient in decimals by the time they leave her room. So she would use an example, and then she would start an open conversation on them. Okay, if this is our number, what number is in the 10th place? And then they'd have open conversations, discuss it, and then they would make sure that they could replicate that with another question. And then she would have them do it on their own. We'll write the number and look at the place value. The last number that you write will fall in the place value that is stated. So she gives them the words, and now they have to put them in the decimal format. So it's almost like the reverse of what she was doing. And then they would do it again, except for this time with the numbers. And then when they were able to do that, they knew that they were successful.
So that's what a lesson looked like, and now we're on slide 18. The possible schedule, we booked out 12 weeks, and we were very conscious into the actual classroom meetings week 2. And we actually started with a field trip because we wanted to give them a cultural hook, to get them involved and to get them excited about being part of this team. And that's exactly what it did. And then weeks 3 through 5 was classroom instruction. After those 3 weeks, we gave them another field trip to refresh the why. Then went back and did some more content instruction, 7 and 8, and then Iowa assessments came week 9, and we celebrated that with week 10, 11, and 12 going on more field trips. So to end, this last picture that you see on slide 19 was actually taken just outside the Jocelyn Museum in Omaha, Nebraska. And that's exactly how they felt. They felt they're worthy. They felt they were winners because of the improvement they showed on their achievement. And the belief is carried over. They've actually, all these students have gone a grade up, which is 7th grade, and they've been coming back to us as 6th grade teachers asking if they could still participate in a 6th grade Voyage to Proficiency Club. So that's a nice hurdle or a nice question to have. We don't have the answer yet, but nice question to have. So it's a tremendous experience, and if there's anything we can do as far as coming out to your buildings or coming out, you can have us contact us here. I'll let Megan finish the contact information, and then I thank you very much for your listening. Megan, you want to share that and wrap it up?
Yeah. If you would like to contact us about anything that we were sharing today, you're more than welcome to email us, and then we have our respective course subjects up there. And I want to wrap up by saying that Voyaging to Proficiency made education fun for many of the students that we have. And so often kids sit in class and they don't see how the knowledge transfers. However, with Voyaging to Proficiency, we made the education fun so that they could see how this knowledge would transfer. And then it made it so that it almost rewarded them for just learning. And I know that I will second Marty's statement about how many of the students come back and ask us if they can still participate in 6th grade Voyaging to Proficiency. But I do think that this club is transferable not only with academic subjects, but also things like social emotional learning and other subjects as well, so that it doesn't have to be limited. But I would highly suggest small grouping and making sure that the kids feel like they are welcomed and they are accepted into this group.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Marty and Megan. I think this has been really inspirational for programs that are looking to beef up some of their support to those kids on the bubble, just to nudge them over into proficiency. So I appreciate your time sharing this program with us. We're hoping that maybe you could come to Impact, our annual conference in the spring, and share other information on Voyage